Hey, this is Wes here with the Lewis County Scoop, and we got Michael Scoggin sitting down with us. Going to discuss a little bit of why you should vote for him at the upcoming election for school board. What do you think, Michael?
Let's get to it.
Well, tell us about your family.
So I'm Michael Scoggin. Steve and Renee Scoggin are my parents. Usually that's how people recognize, like, you're Steve Scoggin, Renee Scoggin. Yeah. How can you tell me? I can tell you're Scoggin. Like, I thought better looking at that.
Yeah.
Matthew Scoggin, that's my brother. He's at Hellspan.
Right.
And yeah, actually, as Robert Reed kind of reached out, they were looking for board members. I mean, this is probably one of the first times we've had an election in a while where we've had people kind of come out and run for this. But originally he kind of reached out and no one ran, so I got on the board. And yeah, it was a pretty interesting learning experience. Kind of go into it. I had an idea of how things work, but you kind of learn about like how the funds are. And I think that's one thing is like the community.
They don't understand.
Yeah, there's a lot of things, and I'm sure you've seen that with with the list down now.
Oh yeah,
there's questions that come up, and it's, well, what about this? Like, well, that's not really how that works.
When you get government funding,
Yeah,
they kind of tell you how you're supposed to spend it.
oh yeah, yep,
or you don't get it.
yep.
So,
And if the one thing I could point out too is, and you see it as well, we have overregulated ourselves and out of common sense, it seems like. And that's all the way to how we feed our kids,
yeah,
how we teach our kids. If anything to kind of reach out, it's towards the higher politicians that we can't necessarily blanket policy the state of Missouri, because how Highland works is completely different than how Palmyra works.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure Lewistown works completely different than how LaBelle works.
Yeah.
And you see that as well. But I think we're the first or second in bus route distance.
Yeah.
And either first, second in gravel roads travel.
Yeah.
So when you see a cut to transportation, that hurts us probably a lot more than, say, a school that they're just traveling a few minutes. There's certain things kind of coming through. I forget the proper name for it, but it's essentially like the right to choose a school that your child goes to.
Yeah.
So I kind of look at that, and it's one of those things. If it's passed, I kind of have my hands up in the air. I like the idea of we're the land of the free, so freely choose what you want. But I look at a place like Highland where we have some distance travel, and you look at like the LaGrange or outside Monticello, and there's kids traveling or parents traveling 20 minutes to ball practice.
With that initiative that they're trying to push, does that mean their tax dollars follow that student?
I don't think it does. I think and I could be wrong on it.
Right.
I'm going to be the first, I guess I'm the politician who's going to, I don't know. I'm not going to lie. But yeah, I think, that money stays with them. I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong. I'd double check on that.
Right.
That's one of those things you look at like LaGrange. You have the highway there. Is it easier to take your kid to Canton or Palmyra, or is it easier to travel? I'm not sure.
Right.
What is it, 15, 20 minutes from LaGrange?
Yeah.
Could you be in Canton in 5 minutes?
Right. You got a lot of places there on Highway 6 with kids to go to Highland that could easily go to Palmyra.
Yeah. And, as a board member, those are the things you look at. I like to, I guess, look beyond maybe something that's supposed to. And I've been saying this for a while, just as I farm. One thing, I interact with a lot of, I'd say 60 plus year olds. And if you look at like the population of Lewis County, and I actually looked this up today, and there's another thing, double check all this. In the 80s to the 90s, we had a population drop in Lewis County. And part of that, I believe, was due to the farming crisis of the 80s. That stabilized. And then we had a dip in the early 2000s. And we've kind of seen that downward trend. And our demographic right now, we are, very strongly, I believe it's like 40 to 65 plus. So we're looking at some issues in the next 10 to 15 years in population. Well, those are things that affects the school. Now,
what is the normal size for Highland?
I think we're around 800 student. I think around in there.
Okay.
Now I'm not sure what your class size was.
Well, in 97, we graduated in 97.
Yeah. So we're seeing a downward, slightly.
It's almost 100 kids in one class. So,
and I think, my dad, who I don't know, he graduated, it's been a while ago. But I think he said he had 150 kids in his class,
Right.
which I think he might have had the largest at the time. But you're seeing this downward trend.
Mhm.
And so I'm also part of, I'm on the IDA and Port Authority Board as well.
Mhm.
And that's one of those things you kind of look at is how do we bring more business and how into Lewis County? How do we keep kids from leaving Lewis County? Um, and that's one of those things that it might be beyond my what I should be looking at as a board member for Lewis County, but
It all ties together.
it's all
Yeah.
tying together.
Yeah.
And so I have there's a gentleman we farm for. His name's Hadley Williams. He's the state geologist.
Jim Hadley. He's
Yep.
a good guy.
That's one of the most brilliant people you'll
Yep.
talk to. And I was talking to him. I said, "What's some things to look at for what I may see in my lifetime?" And he actually brought up we could see a population boom in these smaller towns, and this is before COVID or any of that. And the reason being is people are going to get tired of living in the city, and they're going to move back to this small living and or small town living. And we're getting things like fiber internet and these amenities that allow for at home work.
Yeah.
And then James Sinoff comes along and starts the stuff in LaBelle.
Mhm.
And it's like, well, what's this for? It's like, I think you'll see a boom in a place like LaBelle with these people working from home and they'll want a coffee shop and they'll want a place to eat.
Cheaper living.
So, and I think if you look at the statistics, actually from 2019 to now, we've had a slight increase in population. So it's how do we continue to have these kids graduating, stay in Lewis County?
Yeah.
And, we are a school in the middle of a cornfield, but we produce phenomenal doctors and phenomenal individuals going into business.
Yes.
And, for whatever we have
through the whole spectrum, even kids that don't graduate or that don't even go to college or have good businesses.
Yeah.
It's I don't know, it's a goodwill of Lewis County or it's the parenting as well, but
and it's so one of the things we're kind of doing now, we did it as last year we had Portrait of a Graduate. And basically what that was is what as a community, what do we want to see our kids look like as they graduate?
Right.
And things are changing so quick. We'll use Lewis County Scoop for an example. The technology has changed so quickly over the last 10 years even, that this is something that could be harder to do 10 years ago. Well, now with camera technology and microphone technology, the entry level is cheaper than it was. And that's something, these kids are coming through. There's jobs that may be available that we don't know about yet.
Right.
Then you throw artificial intelligence in on top of that, which is policy that we'll be looking at soon. What does that look like for these kids and their learning?
I mean, it's here to stay.
Yeah.
So it's how to control it and use it the right way.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a tough thing, but
And
might
that's,
as well get used to it.
oh yeah. And that's one of those things too, I'm sure we were raised in a time where you have to memorize this stuff because, especially in math, you may not have a calculator on you at all times.
Right.
Well, I have a calculator in my pocket at all times.
Yeah.
And if it's really hard math, I can pull up, ChatGPT or whatever, and it's going to throw out a lot of different information to me. First I'd like to point out, I'm not an educator. When I look at policy or when we're doing things at school, I'm going to listen to the educators for guidance. Like I said, I'm not an educator. And when we're implementing policy like artificial intelligence, you have to listen to those who actually teach the kids. I coached the kindergarten basketball team this year, and how they do a teacher at kindergarten does it, it's beyond me.
I know.
Those kids are running around 100 miles an hour.
All of them teachers out there, if they're great, all of them.
Yeah. But yeah, it's just, you look at how the technology is changing so quickly. And even, we were raised in the time where you have to go to college.
Right.
Well, now we're seeing the school do things working with, I think it's John Wood, where a student can go in and learn welding and essentially have a job right out of graduation. And those are the type of things I like seeing. I like to see that continued, the education kind of that way. There's a lot of businesses around here, and you don't want to take anything away from a student. We should push more kids to be doctors and things like that. And but our industry around here is more. See a lot of kids going to construction.
It's a lot of hands-on.
A lot of welding. There's a lot of graduates doing end up at NAPIDE or maybe work for the Murphy Brothers, or for a local farmer. And it's kind of how do you, in the same sense, you don't blanket policy these schools, but how do you have a school prepare a kid for
How do you get
a
away?
local area?
Yeah.
And then how do you also push these kids. The next Ring doorbell could be invented by. There's no reason a kid from Highland doesn't invent the next Ring doorbell. And how do they do so and continue to build that business in Lewis County and stay in Lewis County? And I think that's one of those things where we, as a community, reach out to our politicians and look at, pulling back all these regulations to allow business to be grown here in Lewis County. That's one of those things as you kind of get into, I guess, the political field, and as you've seen, there's a lot of things that you kind of shake your head to.
You get upset because you can't get something done quick.
Yeah. You see a lot of, well, I want to build this or do this. It's like, that's fine, but there's a 50,000 study on top of that.
Yep.
How there could be a plant or an eagle down the road 10 miles, and we need to do a study how it affects it. And those are the things where I like to see regulation get pulled back,
Right.
Especially in the schools. And you're seeing this push too with Missouri, where a lot of funding could put in, looking at going to like the private side. And that's fine, but I like to see the public schools put on the same playing field.
Right.
Let's pull back some of the regulations on the public schools.
Yeah, these charter schools have different rules than what we got to play by.
Yeah.
So,
Yep.
I get that totally.
Yep. And, there's things, we talk about Highland, the Highland cases compared to like a Canton. Well, that is an issue where we have a lot of distance to travel. That's one of those things I had in my mind when we were putting together basketball practice for the kindergartners and second graders. There's parents having to figure out how to travel back to the school. And, we have a lot of distance to travel for some of these parents, especially if you're out closer to outside LaBelle or Monticello. Right. And that's one of those, I think, issues you run into, especially like either football team, things like that, where you may not have such a tight knit community compared to some of these other schools just on the time traveled. I grew up in the Stephenville area, so my best friend was in Stephenville, but there's kids in LaGrange that maybe I didn't interact with as much because my parents weren't traveling that distance to see with those kids. So that's one of those things you kind of look at, and it's kind of a unique situation. And how do you fix problems like that? I'm not really sure. One of the things I've talked to a teacher about this, and you look at things like, can individuals build like community centers in a Monticello where, I could have a basketball practice at Highland one week and maybe at the Monticello community center the next, or in the LaBelle community center. Those are the things that you kind of look at. And
Lewis Townsfield's always open. So.
Yeah.
And we're getting ready to do a new basketball court here pretty soon, hopefully. So. But yeah, you try to make it feasible for all kids and all parents to make every practice and get something done,
Yeah. And I'm sure you see it as well. One of the things with all schools is, and you see it as an individual family, our prices have increased as far as our liability insurance, our electric, the fuel, and the school faces the same things. And, you look at, people ask about like the taxes and stuff like that. Well, we face a lot of the same challenges that everyone as an individual has as well. And those are kind of the things that we kind of keep in the back of our head on the board. These prices keep increasing, and it kind of affects everybody as it happens.
It just seems in the past, and I mean, I know you're pretty well outspoken and you're going to talk to people. It just seems like stuff has been kind of, I'm not going to say hidden, but it's just not discussed.
Yeah.
And it's good to get them topics out there where people can understand them.
So. Oh yeah. And this is one of the things I would love to come in here, get JT or any of the board members. I'd love to come in here more often. I recently did the coffee with a candidate at Handlebar or LaBelle. I want to do more of that. And not necessarily just as someone on the board, but I think just as a community, if we could come together, and kind of discuss some of the things and what we want to see our community be. And I think it's one of those things. My wife and I, we kind of sat down and we have an outlook where we want to be in 5 years, 10 years. And I think that's one of those things we can look at as a board for the school and as a community.
Yeah.
What do we want to see Lewis County in 5 years or 10 years?
Absolutely.
And, I'm always of the opinion, if I get a hold of something, I want to leave it better in a better shape than when I had it. And that's ultimately my goal is, if I'm on the board, continue to be on the board, I want to leave it better than the way I found it. And the same concept you have kind of going into farming. When you rent a piece of ground, I like to keep it nice and clean and better than the way I found it when I hand it off to the next generation.
What is one of your goals for Highland, do you think, or the Lewis County district?
Well, One of the things I'm really, interested in, I think it's super important, is that early childhood education. So we've implemented the preschool. Recently, got an award for it, recognized in the state of Missouri, and I think continuing that growth with it. I didn't really think about it until I had uh, a kid, Elliot, and mom could have watched Elliot uh, the entire time until he went to kindergarten. And I got talking to some kindergarten teachers, and they were talking about the cougar den, because that was basically what was available there at the time, and how the kids coming from the cougar den were more developed. And you think about it, that those early years, say 3, 4, 5 years old, um, if they're not interacting with other kids or a teacher, they're not learning, say, to put shoes on or a jacket on, and then they go into kindergarten without those skills, they're already behind. Because the idea you get into kindergarten is you're learning your very basics of reading and your math and interacting with other kids.
Yeah, and if you got a kid that's then behind, then they take more time and it's taken away from the others as well.
So I would like to see growth in that early childhood development.
That's good.
With the school.
Yeah.
I know it's, you look at something like the FEMA shelter going up. For a long time, we've needed more gym space, places to get these kids in and get practice. There's some, talk. We could have potentially put money towards, fixing this or that school. And I kind of thought about that. Those are all great, opinions towards that. But what's the saying about the tree? The best time to grow a tree was like 25 years ago. We could have potentially built this 25 years ago for extremely, extremely less cost.
Oh, I know.
And we're doing it now, and so we're fixing that issue. And the nice thing about that is it's very. When we were discussing it, there's a lot of different ways that building could have went. And, my opinion towards it was keep it modular, keep it where anybody can use it. So while it's not a full gym, I think, it's called like an elementary gym.
Right.
So there is a place for, kids to practice their basketball. I think wrestling, wrestling will have access to it. And there's other things that'll be used for. It's just things like that. So we alleviated the pressure on that issue. So now it's looking for the next.
Yeah.
I would like to see some plans kind of worked out where towards like maintenance, which we're looking at HVAC at the high school, and it's one of those things where have an emergency fund. You have a new HVAC system in. Well, what's going to happen the next 10 to 15 years?
Right.
You're probably going to need a new one. So if we could look at potentially saving money to the side to fix coming issues, which we are now.
Right. Not like the building I've walked around. It needs some work for sure.
Yep. And then there's those little things, just like your home, that pop up. It's like the foundation on the addition. You have issue with that, just like anywhere. Those things pop up, and I like to problem solve, and problems come up, and I like to be there to help solve as many problems as possible. And it's been an interesting learning experience there.
So you got on when it wasn't an unexpired term. It was just nobody signed up.
Nobody signed up.
Yeah. So then they voted you in at the meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Was there two of you then, or just one?
So it was myself and another. He didn't know if he would be capable. I mean, it is, it's a time sink. I'm at school. There are a few of those meetings. We're there till midnight.
Oh, I know.
11, 10 o'clock. There is education with it. I want to say it's 70 hours of videos you have to watch. It seems, I don't know, honestly know if that's right.
All the teachers got to do it every year too.
That seems like 70 hours maybe too much, but we'll just say it's 70 hours for this.
Yeah.
And then you go spend a day in Columbia with the Missouri School Board Association, and there's a time sink to it. And outside of that as well, I have been spraying crops, and I've gotten a phone call, and I'm a 24/7 type of guy. If you have issues, call me 24/7. If you call me at 3 a.m, let me wake up a little bit, maybe make a pot of coffee, but I will gladly talk to you. And so there's a time sink, and outside of some of the questions asked, that kind of fills your mind and how to fix those problems or issues. And it's fun. I love talking to the community and how to fix some of the problems that we have.
Well, that's good.